Dominique Peebles, public member.
Colleen Swiggin, public member.
All right.
Matt Waller, Corning Township trustee.
Greg Custerman, Hamilton County Public Health.
And Commissioner Denise Dreehouse.
Tony DiFuccio, Industry or Waste Generator Representative.
All right.
Brad Johnson, Director of the Hamilton County Department of Environmental Services.
Kevin, we're headed over your way.
Kevin Ty with Commissioner Denise office.
Ashley, Hamilton County Environmental Services.
Terry Herman Motion. Tim Mara with Oxbow.
Sally Danamiller, Sierra Club Miami Group.
Ally Soledad, Hamilton County Environmental Services.
Steve Shin, Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office. Commissioner Baker, Hamilton County. Second Councilor, DBA. All right, very good. Welcome, everyone. And I can see that we've got some folks joining us virtually as well. First order of business is to approve of the minutes of our previous meeting. You've all had a chance to take a look at those minutes. Are there any deletions, corrections, additions? Not, I'm going to entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll move to public comment. It's got two comment cards. In the order that I got them, so Marie, you're first. Oh, okay, well, Tim, you're first. It doesn't matter.
I was gonna say also they should have replied.
Oh, all right. All right.
Okay, great. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. As you've heard me say before, I really prefer the Tier 2 increase to be $2, a total of $2 to make it a $2 increase to be $4. However, I am total support of of Matt Waller's proposal to raise the Tier 2 fee a whopping 75 cents. Editorial comment there. It's time to get some payback from the surrounding counties who bring their trash into Hamilton County and bring air pollution, odor, truck traffic, and pollutants into our drinking water and aquifer. Our citizens have been suffering from these pollutants and need some relief. Therefore, in conclusion, I totally support the proposal that Mr. Waller is going to bring for us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Tim, did you say you wanted to wait?
Yes.
Will you remind me?
I will.
All right, very good. Oh, Sally Danamiller, I'm sorry, I didn't have your card. There you are. All right, yeah, Sally Danamiller. Well, I wanted to speak before number 5. Okay. All right, you both need to remember. All right, let's move on to the resource revenue update and analysis. Michelle?
Yeah, and that
Oh, there's somebody else who says they'd like to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's somebody online.
Yep.
Who is this, Rick?
They have not identified themselves, we'll have to identify themselves.
All right,
So on the iPhone, they'll have to unmute.
all right, so whoever's on the iPhone, there we go, unmute yourself, identify yourself if you would, and you've got the pleasure of the floor for 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. This is Carrie Davis. I don't know why it's not identifying me. I don't know how to do that. But anyway, I would like to warn this committee that to permit Mr. DiPuccio or Mr. Waller to discuss any matters or vote on any issues that they personally have an advantage or benefit from. They have actions pending against them, quo warranto for their removal, for continuing to participate in discussions and voting on matters in which they have been told they have a conflict of interest. So I am just giving you notice that these discussions are inappropriate when the individuals are going to be personally benefiting from the proposals before them. So, and the committee is acting erroneously when they allow them without objection to continue to participate and vote on these matters. Mr. DiPuccio does not have the ability to vote on any matter before this body related to the solid waste plan, and he should abstain from all discussion and votes.
All right, thank you, Carrie.
Yes, ma'am.
Michelle, we're gonna move on to your item.
This is attachment B. We have revenue for the first 3 months. We're comparing 2021
2022 to the first 3 months of 2023. We had about a 5% increase in revenue from last year. The tonnage, is falling like it has. It's about an overall 4.5% increase in tons. We did have a 3% decrease in tons of out-of-state, a 8% ton increase in out-of-district, and about a 2% increase in in-district tonnage. Any questions? I can answer.
Any questions? Okay. All right, thank you, Michelle. Policy items for discussion, the USDA composting and food waste reduction cooperative agreement.
Yeah, so we are very excited about this. We've been working with Cheryl Floyd, which is the county grant writer. She's been fantastic. And she is helping us write a CSWR, or Composting and Food Waste Reduction Cooperative Agreement, which is basically like a grant where they help you a little bit. The grant is available, I'm just gonna call it a grant, but it's available for up to $400,000 with a 25% match, so it could be up to a $500,000 project. And in looking at past grant applications that were successful and talking about our needs, we would like to partner with Adams Claremont Solid Waste District, because they applied for this grant last year. Actually, the Solid Waste District didn't, Soil and Water Conservation District did, and they were unsuccessful, but they got some good feedback. And so we would like to kind of build on what they applied for and make it even more. So they applied for a site in Milford to basically move up. And so if you think about small-scale composting, so under 500 square feet where they don't have to get a registration, all three of these sites that we're looking at are already small-scale composters. So they're already actively composting, bringing things from the community, but they're doing it on a very small scale. What this grant would do would give them the resources to bump it up to medium scale. So we're not talking about creating large-scale facilities that are bringing things from all over. We're talking about them taking care of their own materials and the community around them, basically. So we're looking at, we're working with 3 different partners. Miami Township, and that's Hamilton County's Miami Township over on the west side, Lincoln Heights, and Milford. Milford is in Adams Claremont Solid Waste District. They're not in our district. So that's hence bringing in Adams Claremont Solid Waste District. So we're currently working with the small-scale composters, partnering with them, finding out what they need. Our next step would be going to those various community elected bodies and getting their support before we would apply. We would want a letter of support from those elected bodies. So right now, we're still kind of in the early stages of it. We're going to finish this application through May, and what I am requesting here is support to, we don't know exactly how much we're going to apply for, but support to apply for up to the max of $400,000, which would be taking $100,000 from our carryover as a match for that grant. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. And as I said in my statement, these could potentially become Class 2 composting sites, but they would be medium scale, so they wouldn't be, don't expect to be bringing a whole bunch of food scraps here. It's Lincoln Heights taking care of Lincoln Heights food scraps, not, not a lot from outside.
But they could become Class 2. Do they have the physical space to be able to do that?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah. All 3 sites do have the ability, but not to become large-scale facilities. We're just talking about medium scale, a little bit amped up from what they're currently doing.
And do you know what the selection criteria are?
Yes, they have a whole list of selection criteria. They're really big on wanting us to show that we are also doing food waste reduction education, which we are solid there. We can definitely make a case there. They also want to work with underserved communities. They want kind of boots on the ground, actual impact, which is why we didn't consider, we are going to mention the organic study in this, but that's why we didn't really thinks that this would be a good fit for the organic study because it's more studying and less action.
Go ahead.
I would say, do any of the 3 sites currently, have they had any other issues? No neighbors complaining about snow, any of that kind of stuff?
No, they haven't. They've all been composting and they've been doing it, really well. I mean, we've been really impressed. And, really it just came together because we've been working with all 3 of these sites, really, and that's why we chose them. There are, you know, a dozen other places that could have, but they just were geographically nicely spaced, and also we had just, in the last few months, met with them and heard about their efforts and want to help them.
Trying to recall back to your new duties, for the solid waste district, does a class 2 compost facility fall under the purview of those rules? Or review?
I do believe it does.
Does that create complications? Should you encourage them to stay under that?
No, I think that, you know, they could go through the process. I don't think it should be a barrier. It's just, you know, they'll be able to get the, support they need from the surrounding communities, or not, if, you know, if really, I mean, if their elected bodies aren't supportive, we're not gonna apply for the grant in the first place, but I think that it shouldn't be a barrier.
So I was a little unclear. Are they only gonna be accepting food waste from with political boundaries or anywhere with?
If they became a class 2, they wouldn't have to, but that's how we're going to write it. So they are, really first taking care of their own resources and keeping that soil resource in the community. Certainly, I don't wanna hold them back, you know, if you know, a community, if Milford wants to take Indian Hills coffee grounds, I'm not gonna tell them they can't, but, it's designed to be a smaller region.
And what is the plan for the finished compost?
They're gonna, all 3 of them are urban, farmer or urban garden sites, and
Okay.
so they all will use it on the site.
It'll
So,
all get incorporated
yeah,
back into the soil for
all
growing their
right there where they're composting, basically.
Colleen, we forgot to welcome you to the
Oh.
Colleen and sweetheart, our new attendant. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so, my name's Colleen McQuick, and I'm the executive director for the Cincinnati Recycling and Reuse Hub, which is a newer nonprofit. My background is actually in, microbiology and chemistry, and then slightly twisty, turny path, I ended up in solid waste recycling and reuse. I live in Green Township on the west side, 2 kids. I went to Mercy, just 90.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
Any other questions for Michelle? Thank you for that report, Michelle. We need a motion. All right.
Motion to enact USDA composting and food waste reduction cooperative agreement.
Second, okay.
All right. Any discussion? Further discussion, I should say. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, there you go, Michelle. Okay. Next item, Cincinnati Parks and Great Parks Biochar and Pilot Project.
Yeah, so I didn't include much information about this, but, if you'll recall, I believe, Sue, it was you who gave the presentation on behalf of Stan because he wasn't able to. I can't remember. About 2 years ago, we did have a presentation on the biochar project. It's getting started. It's Cincinnati Parks, Great Parks, and they've received a grant from Bloomberg Foundation, to create biochar, which I'm not gonna pretend to be an expert on. We do have, and I don't wanna put him on the spot, we do have Sam Dunlop online. But with that, you have to have this on the agenda.
Yeah, I was approached by a council member about the, Solid Waste Policy Committee perhaps, partnering on this pilot project, but I think we probably do need a little more information. So, can Sam be unmuted? Maybe we can get a little bit of background here.
Hey,
Yeah.
everybody.
Welcome.
Sure, happy to provide some background. So we, in 2020, I believe it was, the RFP from Bloomberg came across Ollie Kroner's desk, who's the director of OES. And it was for citywide biochar projects. It was based on Bloomberg Philanthropy's support of the Stockholm Biochar Project, which began in earnest, I think, in 2018. I think it started in 2015. But essentially, the project is to take woody waste from the Parks Department, turn it into biochar on a parcel on Parks property, and then utilize it for various city projects, park-centric, tree planting in particular, but with the it's kind of dovetailed with the Climate Safe Neighborhoods Initiative and in conjunction with the 2020 Urban Tree Canopy Assessment. So I don't know if everybody in this room is familiar with that, but there are, based on that canopy inventory, there is a planting plan, a 10-year plan that's broken down by neighborhood, and you can see that there's an online dashboard. So the biochar will be utilized as part of that tree planting initiative, and we'll also have stormwater management goals attached to that. Great Parks is a partner in this. One of the dynamics with biochar is that it does best when it's combined with compost. It needs to be charged with a nutrient source, so that it's not extracting nutrients from the soil and competing with plants. So a common way of doing that charging is combining it with compost. So Great Parks is, has Parky's Farm, where they have, I want to say it's 400 tons or so of manure that's produced each year, and they're in the process of building a compost facility, or at least in the approval stages of doing a compost facility for that. So the idea is city parks will be producing biochar, county parks will be producing compost, and we'll put them together for the benefit of both entities. So that compost biochar blend will be used for projects for both city parks and for Great Parks, as well as a revenue stream for both. And there are some cool features of the project based on the Inflation Reduction Act funds that are available out there right now. There is funding for combined heat and power facilities. So the place where we're going to be producing the biochar is also the site of a new parks building for the Division of Natural Resources. And we are in the process of designing it such that the biochar production is used to heat and power the facility, which will get 30 to 40% cash back on certain key pieces of equipment. So that's not set in stone, but we're pretty excited about that possibility. Let's see. We just closed the RFP for the technology for the biochar production, and the selection for the vendor is scheduled to happen tomorrow. Sue, what am I forgetting?
I think just the real benefits of the biochar, which is essentially charcoal made from wood chips, and that it reduces morbidity of the street tree plantings, and we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on those trees, and so if we can get more to live longer, it's going to be a good cost savings while we are trying to improve our canopy. And also, it has really amazing stormwater retention properties, so it's also going to help us with the flooding incidences that we have. So that's why I think having this in our region is going to be an asset.
So this is on for discussion only, but I know there's a financial component to this. Can you tell us about that, about a potential partnership with the Solid Waste Policy Committee, if you know?
I'm not sure on that. I think, Sue, you've been doing the most. I'm not sure who that question was directed to, but.
Yeah, I think it's going to be as the county gets into ramping up their compost operation, there's going to probably be equipment needs and such that really haven't been identified yet, that they may become to us for support or matching with a grant application, things of that nature.
Yeah, my understanding is there was some match, but let's get, I did want to just have a conversation before any vote took place for funding. So this is the time to have that conversation, to bring us all up to date and to have us be familiar with what we're talking about here. So at the next meeting, why don't we bring in, anything that, because it was Jeff Crammerning that brought it to me, and I think there was a match, but I don't recall the specific amount. So we'll get further clarity if there's a role to play at this point, or if there's something coming, but I just wanted to make sure we were all familiar with time.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, at the next meeting, if you could, I'd like to hear how much the foundation is providing, how much the city's providing. That's more or less, I assume, for CapEx costs and for operating costs, how that's gonna be handled. And then, and I don't expect you to answer this today, what's the advantage in having the biochar over just going to 100% compost?
I'm happy to attend the next meeting as well and speak to those items.
Great. And did you say, I think you said this, that the city would be using this as well as the county, the Great Park?
Yes.
Okay. Got my county hat on for a second. Did you say county? I think you said county.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're partners. Okay, well, very good. Thank you, Sam, for the update. Appreciate it. We'll bring this back at our next meeting. And maybe there's not a funding request right now, but I do want to get us poised in case that comes forward.
Well, I will say a lot has been hinging on the technology selection for actually creating the biochar. A lot, that's kind of the stake in the sand that we need to start building the rest of the plan around, and that had to go through RFP. So now that we're, as of tomorrow, should have that nailed down, we can start getting more specific and be able to answer that question more effectively.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions about this? Okay, very good. Thank you. Hamilton County Solid Waste Plan update. So now we're going to hear from our speakers. Tim Mera.
Sally would like to go first.
Sally Dan Miller.
Sally Dana Miller, Sierra Club Miami Group. I didn't prepare a statement today. I just wanted to give my reactions to Trustee Waller's proposal that's on the table. As far as Sierra Club, we do back going forward with more funding. We've made that clear in many meetings. But also, I think that the specifics with his fresh plan is very intriguing. We like the fact that it's only 75 cents and not the $2 that Bob Geddert had proposed in the past. That leaves wiggle room. We like that there is the component of the money going to the different communities, the townships and the municipalities. We think that's a really great way to, one, get innovation going. It reminds me of that thing, I don't know what it's called, but Prince William does it. He did it last December, and it was a competition. I think it's called Earth Prize, maybe.
Yeah.
So it kind of reminds me of that, but on a local level. And I think we could get some great ideas coming out of it. I also think that it would serve to be a fantastic PR/education/awareness of what the solid waste issues are in our region. And I think that I would encourage, if the resolution is taken up, I would encourage that each municipality and township would be required to have a meeting, offer a meeting and comments from their constituents, so that it actually involves people and would get a lot more people participating and understanding about solid waste. If you look around this room, there aren't that many people here, even including the people on the screen. So it would just take it down to the local level, and I think it would really push out the issue and make everyone say, yes, we need to divert from the landfills, we need to recycle, we need to compost, we need to do all these things and save our space that we have at our current landfill. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally. Mara.
Thank you. My statement today is on behalf of the Solid Waste Caucus. On multiple occasions during the last year, our Solid Waste Caucus has attempted to persuade the Policy Committee to include in its plan update a more aggressive approach to the reduction of waste going to landfills, including an increase in Tier 2 fees of up to $2 per ton, which increased revenue would be used to fund various programs, including but not limited to universal waste collection, universal access to recycling, and a separate recycling program for organics. The Policy Committee rejected these proposals by a vote of 4 to 3. Our concern is that, in effect, you are kicking the garbage can down the road, and we don't want to waste any more time. We want to get action. Our caucus is not giving up. We seek action now, not years down the road. And Bob Getter made a detailed proposal for use of Tier 2 revenue, but his well-thought-out ideas met with not enough votes. In fact, few, if any, suggestions put forth by the public during the opportunities for public input were embraced by the districts. We are pleased to learn that Trustee Matt Wallert, who was one of the 4 votes against our original proposal, has continued to work to find common ground for a more impactful and immediate plan for waste reduction. Trustee Wallert's proposals are summarized in a clear, well-reasoned statement by him. This proposal is an amendment to the solid waste plan, which would increase Tier 2 fees by 75 cents rather than $2 per ton, as previously proposed, and would distribute the new revenues to the county's constituent communities on a prorated basis on population, thus allowing each community to create its own program for waste diversion. And the county would retain a portion of the new revenue to provide staffing to advise communities on their individual plans for use of the revenue. We ask that in the spirit of compromise and cooperation, that the Policy Committee support Trustee Wallert's well-conceived and creative proposal. The PC's last vote was 4 to 3, which means if there's to be any progress, everyone will have to give a little for us to move forward. And really, isn't that the way it should be? No one gets everything they wanted. No one leaves without some sense that we are working together in a cooperative effort for the benefit of all the people of Hamilton County. And I emphasize for all the people of Hamilton County, because it is the people of Hamilton County who alone have been burdened because of all the garbage generated by neighboring counties, which comes into Hamilton County. And that means that the people of Hamilton County are burdened by the smell, the traffic, the environmental degradation, and the health hazards that come with landfills. Other counties should be quite willing to pay a mere 75 cents per ton to export and escape those burdens. And equally important, that money under Trustee Wallert's proposal would be used to fund solid waste programs selected at the community level to reduce dependency on landfills. We urge you all, members of this Policy Committee, to support Mr. Wallert's proposals. Thank you.
Tim, is Oxbow included in the solid waste caucus? I'm just confused.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thanks, that's all.
All right, so, we're gonna move through this item. We've got 4 different things to talk about. The timeline, the changes. Remember at our last meeting, we talked about, changes to the plan, and we wanted to have the Policy Committee have all of those in one document, so we could look at that all at one time. We've got Matt Wallert's proposal, and then we've got, the plan update ratification. So Michelle, please walk us through items 1 and 2.
So the timeline should be pretty quick, because you've all seen this before. This is, the basic timeline of where we are at from the beginning, when we started the plan update officially on May 7th, 2021. We sent the draft to Ohio EPA, received the comments. The plan is to start ratification, hopefully today. And then, we will have 90 days after that start, and I will actually go to the next slide because that kind of zooms in on this section. Once, the Policy Committee initiates ratification, we have 90 days. We actually have 30 days to notify communities and then 90 days, but this was written in a time when there wasn't email. So as soon as you ratify, we will notify the communities. We will also send official snail mail letters to try to get, so we have to get 60% of the communities representing 60% of the population to ratify the plan. So we have 90 days to do that. Once we have that, we also need, the Board of County Commissioners approval and the City of Cincinnati's approval. Once we do that, then we, put that all together in a packet, we send it to Ohio EPA for approval. They also have 90 days. I don't know if they'll need 90 days because they've already thoroughly reviewed it, but they have officially 90 days. So we could, receive approval earlier, but, that 90 days would be November 2023, and then the new plan would start in 2024. Any questions about that? I probably should put it all in one show, but, I will walk through the changes, and these are, my computer doesn't let me have two PowerPoints open at the same time. These are the next attachment. One slight adjustment. So just walking through, this was something that, the policy committee really discussed last time. This is just making that clarification that this is community-wide multifamily recycling. This is something that was already discussed, so I'm not planning on spending a lot of time on that one. This was one that I do think is worth discussion. This was a public comment, that we received to include the zero waste hierarchy from the Zero Waste International Alliance. So when I first heard it, I thought, great idea, you follow, first you reduce waste, then you reuse, then you recycle or compost, and then you landfill what is, and so at first glance, it seems like this would be a no-brainer. But as I looked at it more thoroughly and thought about it, I do think that it might be problematic, for reasons that I expressed in the memo, but also, incineration, there's some materials that have to be incinerated right now, like, there's some prescription drugs, some medical waste that have to be incinerated. So to say incineration is unacceptable is, it's not really feasible. I would also, this clearly puts, that is in the no waste to energy camp, which I'm sure Stu knows, it's a very controversial thing in the solid waste community of whether waste energy is good or whether everything should be recycled. And Ohio EPA has not taken a position on this, and neither has Hamilton County. So if we put this in our plan, it would seem like we're taking a position, no waste to energy. This waste energy is not something that has come up a lot. The closest one would be in Indianapolis. It's not something that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, but it's a little more controversial than I thought. So what we could do as a alternative, actually US EPA does not have a great just general hierarchy. They have a great one for food waste, they have one for toxic waste, but they don't have one for just everything else. So I pulled this, sorry it's not a great graphic, but I pulled it from Minnesota. Actually has one that's very similar to what we would follow. And so we could generate something like this for our office. Our graphic designer could put something like this together. That would be a little less controversial, but still follow the same path. So we could do this, or another option would just be to not include it. We've already included the food waste one that US EPA has promoted and that we follow. So we don't necessarily need to include this, but it's up for debate if you want to include it or not. If you want to discuss, or shall I move on?
Yeah, let's discuss. Where did this, idea come from?
This was a public comment from Bob Getter.
All right, any discussion related to this? Adding this,
yeah.
we're talking about adding things to the plan here, changes to the plan.
I think it's pretty much aligned, with the plan. And I think also with the international definition, they recognize that 10% will still, likely get incinerated or landfilled. They're like, it's only the 90% that they really think that they can keep, use in other ways. And so I could be convinced either way.
I'm kind of, one half dozen other, so,
Yeah.
So what are you all saying?
I mean, yeah.
I'm okay either way. I feel feel like it's not a bad idea just because there's a little bit more education maybe. It kind of goes back to the hub, even though I'm speaking for myself, kind of our thought of we want to get people to think differently about how they use resources, and this kind of helps do that.
So are you both referring to this chart as opposed to the one?
Yeah, I would say the original one, but with some language changes.
Looking more like this.
Yes.
Yep, okay, let's go with the Minnesota version next.
Yeah, as far as the names, as far as the words and stuff, yeah.
Okay, so you're comfortable with this? Any other discussion about what we're looking at on the screen here and having this added to the plan? You know, we've been talking about this, it seems to be with what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really, the waste to energy is the bottom, it's flipping and technology is changing,
Yeah.
so
Okay. All right, without any further discussion, let's move on to the next one.
This is, a slightly modified, so I did print it out, for everyone. This is the only color copy you should have in front of you. This is a change to chapter 6, page 36, and it is, language that we've been going back and forth with the city on. This was originally back and forth with the city, language, and really what it does is, and I'm sorry, this is a lot, but, it replaces language that was already in there. We already had that we were gonna do a $150,000 organic study. What this does is speed up the timeline of that to where we would put out the RFP this summer and actually do a special allocation to start the study this year, with hope to get the results by the spring of 2024. And then it clearly lays out, based on the results of that study, that we would take, how much would an organic processing facility cost, and, that we would figure out, what would the fee increase would need to be to make that happen. And so it lays out in here, that we would bring that to the policy committee before January 1st, 2025. And so this would do basically have a, fee change discussion in between plans. So we wouldn't be waiting until the next plan. We would ask communities, we would say, hey, communities, we haven't done a fee increase since 1992. We've got this organic facility that we want to, build. Basically, this is gonna cost this much money from this study. This is why we wanna increase the fee this much. So that's the language that is laid out. And I think because it was too big to put on a slide, I included the red line of what is replacing.
Okay. So, thank you for doing this. We've been back and forthing it with the city to try to get to something that, I feel as though we have been talking about this for months. I think we have been talking about this for months. And we've been talking about a timeframe that was expedited, which, Michelle, you agreed to at the last meeting. And so I think there was some folks wanted to see it in writing. I don't know how else to put it. And so here it is in writing. So, the plan is, as always, being funded through our organization. We get the results of that by spring, and then we figure out, and remember, this will incorporate the public sector, the private sector. When it comes to this facility, it'll talk about siting, which I think might be a bit of a challenge for us, but it'll talk about that. And then we will look at the results of the study and say, all right, what then needs to be funded here? And the expectation is that the out-of-district fee, where we've got the ability to pay for some things, if we increase it, would go to funding this facility. That's the idea. Remember that we've got $2 left in that out-of-district fee. I don't want to speak out of turn too far forward, but we really don't know what the cost is going to look like. And so I think at that time, the out-of-district fee is the most logical place to look. We also have in-district fee and we have out-of-state fees. And so I think all of those need to be on the table when we think about funding something of this size, but the out-of-district fee is the most obvious place to go initially for funding for this kind of. So those are my comments to this. We have been working pretty hard with the city to try to come up with a compromise language We were there last time, this just simply solidifies, and I think puts in writing, some of what we all had expected.
And I really appreciate you, willing to do that, and to, hopefully, if the fee becomes necessary for the organics, that I appreciate you being willing to try to make that effective, by January 1st of '25. And, 'cause some of my preliminary research, you know, with New York City and California, is we could spend $45 million on new trucks for hauling of organics. We could spend 13 to 18 million constructing a compost facility. So there's a likely, very high chance that even with maxing out our fees, we could exceed, it could still cost more. And funding mechanisms might be necessary down the road, to do that, in addition to raising the fees. 'Cause I think we should be prepared for sticker shock when the organic study comes back. And, so anyway, I really appreciate you putting a fast track on this so that, that the fees can start to be collected sooner rather than later, because I'm pretty confident it's not gonna come in under 18 million. Yeah.
Well, to be clear, we all talked about expediting this last
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
That was just my idea, we were all
This is, yeah,
anxious to get this.
so I'm cool.
Other comments to this language?
I don't have a problem with the language, but wanted to be clear that I think we should be considering changes to all tiers. Particularly since we're saying Southwest Ohio, that is more than just Hamilton County, and this is something I think I've said in the past, is that we need to look at both recycling, waste management, everything on a more regional basis. And we've talked about this also, that just increasing the fees for out-of-district waste is not likely gonna reduce the amount of waste coming in Hamilton County from other surrounding counties. I'd like to see us pull those other counties in. Maybe they could actually have a location, put a compost facility. And if we're quote, using their money to do this, then I think pulling them in would gain a lot of support from them, and at the same time, help them as well to reduce their waste stream. I mean, I keep hearing people say we want to reduce the amount of waste that's going into landfills, but we're not doing anything to help the outside regions, and we can do that. Do that easily by, as everyone has said, increase the tier 2 fees. Well, if we're gonna increase the tier 2 fees, let's pull them in on a regional basis as well. I think it can have a much greater impact and overall can reach one of the goals that have been discussed, which is reducing the amount of waste that's going into landfills. I think we just have glossed over that aspect of it, looking at a more regional approach on this. That's kind of my thoughts on it.
Is there any sort of goal for how much tonnage would be used at this site, or is that something that the study will take into account and kind of say? Okay.
Yeah, I agree that we should be looking at all the tiers. As a starting point, I thought the out of district would be the path of least resistance to start, but totally open to the rest.
All right, very good, thank you.
That was the last one that I put in my slide. I did forget to add the siting strategy changes that were discussed at the last meeting, that they were discussed at the last meeting. It was just changing it to organics processing facility, making it a little bit more general than just food processing.
Yeah, because, especially since there's so much compostable stuff now that is hitting the market, that we might be able to address with this.
All right,
Can we go back
Yep.
one step back to the outreach policy? That was the one. I'd like to just make one change in that to make it more inclusive in the first sentence, where it says we've identified food as a primary waste stream. I'd just like to add to that, identified organic waste, including food waste. Primary waste, I guess that would be stream. I think it fits with everything else we've discussed.
Everybody okay with that change?
Yep, no problem.
All right, thank you, Michelle. All right, the next item is trustee Waller's proposal.
Thank you. I think everybody's been provided a copy with, an original proposal, and I know that, staff, presented, a memo, and I updated the proposal, to hopefully, address some of the issues that came up in the staff memo. First, I want to apologize. I can tend to have sharp elbows and just kind of jam things in the last minute, which is what I've done here. And I apologize to everyone for that. I generally want to work under the circumstances, the assumption that, if I get one more day, I can find one more thing of information on something. So it makes it difficult sometimes with deadlines. So I appreciate you allowing me to present this, and what I put together was alluded to in some of the comments, is that the fee for Tier 2 would be increased, and that those funds would be distributed among the current member jurisdictions based upon a population percentage, and that those communities could then use that for local attempts to reduce and divert landfill. Some of the issues that came up, I did try to address. Number one, that we haven't talked about this a lot. So kind of in the changes to the proposal, what I've suggested is we put in the plan, not that we're going to do this, but we're going to discuss this. We'll vote on the proposal by March 1st, 2024. And at that point, if there's something else folks want to spend the money on, if people are against it, then that just dies at that point. And that gives us really over almost a full year to discuss this, to consider. And then if that vote's affirmative, the Board of County Commissioners would vote by April 1st, 2024. And then if the Policy Board and the County Commissioners, then the member jurisdictions by July 1st, 2024. And this entire plan will sunset on 1/1/29, but then to be renewed at additional terms. So essentially, this is a 3-year experiment to see what happens and what we get from it, beginning with the fees collected on January 1st, 2025. I guess I should read 12/31/28, if I want to be accurate for that. The portion that originally I had set aside for, I think it was $45,000 for Hamilton County Resource. In this, I increased that to a number that I can't really give you a total for because I don't know, but it would be a community director position, which would be a 3-year position and part of this proposal. And instead of that salary coming out at the prorated basis from the communities, they would come from the top 15 jurisdictions. And that way, the ones below the 15 jurisdictions, the ones that I'm actually interested in providing more funds for, will not be responsible for that. And one of the issues, and again, this is more kind of implementation, but this doesn't need to be all at once. So you can, my idea is you do 3 communities January and then 3 more February, and that can be a rolling basis actually for renewal as well. In this, how do we determine what the communities are doing? If it fits the requirements of the ERC, we do a general rubric that either policy board, resource staff, commissioners, whoever wants to be in on that, create, so that we just score it like a rubric. If you hit the score, if you've done this, then you can get the funds. If not, well, then you need to improve something. And one of the other things is that I kind of left it a little bit vague, but this was not intended to be residential only. In fact, I think there are opportunities at commercial levels with local jurisdictions where local jurisdictions can leverage their relationships with local employers better because they're closer to the situation. I think the report said there's over 20,000 employers in Hamilton County. So that's what it is, and I just, with the board's permission, I have, with the chair's permission, just about 3 minutes of kind of why I thought, what went into this, if that's, okay. So I've already made the argument with economic free rider issues, I'll also point out that many of the counties that use this landfill, the population's exploded, since 1988, when this has occurred. Gone up in some cases 20 to 30%. And just in an inflation adjusted basis, $2 in 1988 is $5.08 today. So that certainly is a much different rate than it was in '88. The other thing I want to discuss, and this is, I guess, kind of a predilection of mine. I think that the grassroots level is very important in this. You'll see from Mr. Peebles and Ms. McSwiggan, the two new members that I was involved with the interview process, are both grassroots people. So this is no accident that I have an interest at the grassroots level. I believe it can bring novel approaches. The grassroots can identify issues and questions often ignored by formal institutions. The grassroots can see the hidden resources, identify the potential of community associations, develop networks, and adopt various strategies of mobilization. But the most important thing this can do is that all the literature suggests that grassroots levels are, as a matter of fact, linked to innovation. And innovation is how we get out of these messes that we've created. Often innovation emerges from what we would call cracks of the institutions, because they're not there, they don't have the institutional knowledge. But grassroots is only part of the solution. You need what I'll call horizontal networks of different sizes, the grassroots level, connected to the vertical network, which has the more specialized knowledge on the policy, which of course is Hamilton County Resource. And I'll give you an example from Colerain that just occurred this past 2 weeks ago. In 2018, Greater Northbrook Group began a cleanup day. They just had their 6th year, and the 6th year now involved a group called Greater Groesbeck, so it's Northbrook and Groesbeck now. In over 6 years, they filled 31 dumpsters of trash, and those are the big, long, semi-sized dumpsters, which is some 160,000 pounds and 80 tons. They have disposed of over 800 tires, and over 10,800 pounds of metal has been recycled. Now they're working on other projects that are somewhat related. They put together a pollinator garden, which not really under the jurisdiction of this, but I think no one would argue is a bad thing. There's an individual now in that group of a Greater Northbrook. You take cans to him, he recycles them, and he takes them to the recycle center, and at the end of the year, he'll get a check for it and donate that check to the Shriners annually in the name of our fire department. That's something that emerged from this cleaning up Greater Northbrook. They get sponsors. Taxpayer dollars were probably limited to administrative functions in the creation of this, and they get more and more participation. They're building networks. This would not look the same if it was top down, because I think they've gotten more people involved with the process. With that in mind, I think I've outlined the changes from the original proposal, and whether this passes and becomes part of the proposal or doesn't, I really sincerely hope that this becomes kind of a topic of discussion. I think that there's two routes to this, and that we can use both. I think that the grassroots level remains important. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, let's talk about the proposal. I'm happy to go first. So I appreciate the idea of having interaction with local communities. In fact, I feel like this is so similar to the grant program that we do, where folks, nonprofits apply. We just did a round of them, apply for grants because they've got good ideas, and we fund through this policy committee some of those good ideas. And so I think I see where you're coming from. I understand then moving that over onto a jurisdictional level might make some sense if there are some good ideas in the jurisdiction. My concern with the proposal is that it uses the fee that, let me speak for myself, that I have talked about and others have talked about in terms of the study related to organics and how we're going to fund an organics facility. And so we have $2 left in that out-of-district pot, 75 cents there's not a lot of money, except that it is when you're only talking about $2. And so, I'm very concerned about depleting the ability to use the out-of-district fee then for whatever the study concludes on an organics facility, whether we want to go to other, tiers or not. We still would now have limited ourselves to that funding source because we peeled out 75 cents of the $2. So that's honestly my primary concern about this. And so, because I feel it kind of takes our eye off the ball a little bit when it comes to the organics, facility that we've been talking about for the last few months here. The other thing, and so we have a structure when it comes to these grants that we do. I think it was Karen Hurley that suggested that, and we set aside some dollars for these grants.
Yeah, from the surplus.
Which we,
Impact grants.
from the
Oh,
surplus.
yeah.
And we have a surplus. And so I think the idea of partnering with jurisdictions has merit from where I sit. I wonder if we can replicate what we're already doing with nonprofits, maybe to jurisdictions, because I'm concerned also about the allocation of the dollars. I had a chart, and I don't have it in front of me, I apologize, but so much of the money that was generated by the .75, like over half of it was going to 3 jurisdictions, those being the city, Colerain Township, and Green Township. And so in some jurisdictions got, $900, which can't be really used in, so for anything to my view. So, but I wonder if we can't restructure something, talk about using the reserve to have some kind of grant program that also doesn't create such a heavy burden on the administration, to take a look at, and because we already have something similar for nonprofits. So those are just my thoughts about the proposal having, I don't remember which version I was referring to, Matt, because there's more than one. So I'm referring to whatever version I saw last, and I'm not sure it was the most recent.
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in. I think the optics when we have a surplus without a real dedicated mission on what we're doing just don't look great. So I'm not super excited about voting for an increase. The other item that I guess gives me concern, we are a policy committee, and I really love to rely on the professional staff that we as a policy committee having working for us. I like hearing their voice and echoing off of their ideas, giving them ideas to go with, let them kind of bake them and bring them back and turn them into something. And I feel like in this case, we're kind of doing all of the work and not having the professional staff come back and bring something back to us. I think if we as a group, kind of like Commissioner Dreehouse indicated, if we as a group feel like we want to focus on the organics, then we let Michelle and her team kind of figure out how it works and come back with a proposal on how we could use the surplus that we already have, or if we need additional fees to make that happen, how we can leverage those additional fees. And I understand some of the public comments are certainly putting pressure on us to move quicker. And I think in the last 3 years that I've participated in the solid waste district, we have certainly moved pretty quick and started making change in a way that this group hadn't done in the 10 years that I've been coming. I'm excited about that opportunity, but I really want to focus on the professional staff that we have and let them help drive some of the decisions that we're going to be moving.
So if Matt's plan had said that the money was gonna be used for the organic study, that'd have been something that would have kind of made it easier to look at. I mean, I thought we were originally thinking about spending the money for the increase on the study, correct?
Not on the study, on the actual organic facility.
On the actual facility, okay. So really the issue is just what's gonna happen with the money if we increased it through this plan.
And I think the timing. I think, well, and I'll speak for myself, I think, to me, it feels a little cart before the horse, increasing the fee without knowing what the plan is going to say. And so the idea that, and we have accelerated the timeline for the plan, but once we have that, then we'll have a much better understanding how much and from whence we want to take it. And so then this comes into play. And that's the spring of next year.
So I will say one of my concerns is if we raised it, we did 75 cents now, and we need more money, would we have to raise it again in a year when it hasn't been raised since 1992? And I worry just after seeing how school levies have gone, that kind of going back to that well too many times, people say, we're not gonna do that. So that's my biggest concern, is that if we we take the smaller amount right now, we'll be able to get the bigger amount in the future if we need it.
And I will say that the changes to proposal I made basically push this back a year, and it's basically, for lack of a better word, a fail-safe, that if nothing happens with the organic study, then we have
Definitely
this
good to this.
memorialized that we're going to address it by March 1st, 2024, and that gives time for us to create a structure for it. And that's kind of one of the opposition pieces I heard from a number of people, so not on the board, of course, but from people I ran this by, is that what if you need it for something else? And that would be, this would kind of push this so that it's gonna be the organic study, or it's gonna be this plan, or it's gonna be something else. But
So just let me, so then this would potentially be on pause until early next year, and if we needed to, we could say, hey, we're going to amend this, to say we're gonna need to go to full $2. But if nothing happens regarding that prior to these deadlines, then we start talking about the 75 cents again.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
I don't know, Mr. Commissioner, how that,
Well, we can take action anytime, so I'm not sure at all why we need this. And instead of just bringing it forward after we have the study, we know what we're looking at,
Yeah.
then we make some decisions about, moving forward with the fee, with what the fee goes to, and then all these things come together. In that case, I just don't see any need to do anything else.
so for two reasons, and with all due respect, is number one, the same reason that we have to put the compost timeline in, that it signals to the members of Hamilton County that, this isn't just forgotten. And number two, for internal usage, is it sets that clock off so that it brings action, one way or another. And that's just one way I look at it. That might not be the right way. There's certainly, multiple ways to kind of perceive that, but in my view, that was the important notion for me, is that if we get it in writing, that we're going to head towards this or something else, then we're moving towards a goal. And I guess that's a commitment when it's written on paper, I guess.
I would think about our goal is to get zero waste, and it's a complicated goal, and it's got so many different aspects to it. But I think going back to the staff and saying, how many dollars do we need to get to zero waste, and what are the biggest bangs for our buck? And I hear us as a group thinking that it's organics, and I hear Michelle talking about some ideas towards organics and some studies that help us get there. I think with that information in hand, we then can make a decision on how much to spend. We have a bunch of money. We're talking about a surplus. In fact, Karen had us spend a bunch of the surplus. Let's not get more money until we have the plan on how we work with it. And I'm very much committed over the next year to have this discussion, and I'm very supportive of having a decision, and once we have the plan laid out, I just think it's a bit reckless or not well-intentioned to do it without that plan lined out.
I don't think you really can compare the surplus to the fee increase, because what you can do with surplus money is one-time expenses, where the fee increase is something that you could have a more long-term, some type of a project. So how we use the surplus and how we would use the fee increase are likely to be different types of programs.
I have to have a whole discussion on what we're gonna do with our fees. First of all, I agree with both commissioners on this. Let's find out what we wanna spend the money on, how much it's gonna be, before we start asking for more money, before we know exactly how much it's gonna cost or what we're gonna do. That's one thing. Second of all, that's a big change from using fees for capital expenditures versus operating expenditures. Those are entirely different. And so you're talking about tying up fees for 25 to 30 years. That takes a long discussion. That's a long-term commitment about tying up fees to do that.
Right.
So I'm not there yet at all. We don't even know what those operating fees might be, or those operating costs might be. We're so far from knowing costs at this point, that throwing out something and saying we're gonna increase fees because we're gonna have some additional costs in the future. If the Cincinnati Water Works came to us, if Metropolitan Sewer District came to us and said, we just need additional money because we know we're gonna have additional expenses, well, the first thing that's gonna happen is the and I know MSD goes through a pretty rigorous rate study when they do this, is that people are gonna say, whoa, wait a minute, you tell us what you, exactly, why you need that money and what you're gonna spend it on. And in essence, this is the same, I think the same situation, is that we need to wait and see what we're gonna come up with, what the studies show, what the staff comes up with in terms of both capital costs and operating costs, on any kind of waste reduction, zero waste, whatever, title you wanna put on it. And I agree, having a surplus right now, generally, people don't like to see any public entity having a large surplus. Now, that varies depending on what you define as large, but, I think there's some other issues there too, asking for more money, really set forth a program, say, here's the program we want to do.
We maybe have a compromise, because from what Matt is saying and what I would be comfortable with, is having something in the plan to say, we will discuss fees within the next year, but various people are not, comfortable saying what the fee increase will be or what it will be spent on. Can we simply have something that states the policy committee will revisit fees once the results of the organic study are back and before March 1st, 2024?
We have the ability at any time to go back and look at fees.
But it would be in the plan that's passing to make sure that we revisit that. The way of having it on paper, that we will take this up again.
I think we kind of visit it every 4 months right now. We get a report that says, here's where our revenues are. Now, as we move along, the need, know more and more about the need, but the policy committee can make that assessment whenever they want to. There's no restrictions on that right now. And in fact, I think I said before, I don't know why we set this date of sometime to go back and look at fees. We had an idea about how long the organic study is gonna take, but it could easily extend another 3 to 4 months beyond that. We decided to set a date, which may be somewhat arbitrary, but my point is, we have the ability, we have the flexibility to go back and look at fees at any time. We can do it next week if we want.
But that also gives us the ability to kick the can down the road.
So let's revisit the language so that we, because I don't know if we were clear. So the idea is, in this, language, is to do exactly what you're saying, to put it in writing. That's exactly what this is intended to do, and put a time frame to it. So, it talks about the study, it talks about, RP going out quickly, it's coming in by spring of '24. The city will inform the optimal use of a fee increase or change in fee structure to divert organic matter from the landfill. The committee will receive this information for consideration, and fee changes will be made by date certain, which is January 1st of '25. Could be done before that. So that is language that says we are going to look at this, after we get the study back in next spring, and then decide, if, what a fee increase looks like, how much we need to generate, and then, how we use that fee increase, tied to the organic study. That's the whole purpose for the district language.
Matt, does that language work for you if we were a little more aggressive on the timeline?
Yeah, well, I think for me, that it's the grassroots, leg of this thing. $750 to Lincoln Heights. Some of these communities, seems to me that recycling, in landfill diversion is, you can do it if you can afford it, and if you can afford it, you can't as a community, and if you can't, then you don't get the recycle, fees back, so that it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that those communities aren't gonna get any kind of financial remuneration because they don't recycle because they can't afford to start it. And to me, it can be something as simple, that's why I use the Colerain example, something as simple as the Colerain example. I mean, that was, I would bet that would cost less than $1,000 a year to kind of work through. I know that it makes things more complicated, but I firmly believe that you can innovate more at the local level than you can at the county. You can innovate more at the county level than you can at the state. then that would be,
So I wonder, real quick, I mean, our entire plan gives monies based on population. I
Right.
wonder if we directed staff to look more at the social vulnerability index, which is a widely accepted public health metric for determining these fees. I mean, right now, as Commissioner Greehouse said, that some communities get nearly half of the total fees. Whereas if we used SBI and worked with Michelle to focus on that, then communities like Lincoln Heights that you just out would be at a higher advantage, and we would see better outcome for those lower income communities that have less resources.
Yeah, from the city standpoint, yeah, we've got pockets of areas that definitely are more lower income and more in need of additional resources versus some of our wealthier parts of the community. But I think also on a national level, many programming though is based on how much you can afford to spend on per household. To make it equal kind of across the board. Are you gonna offer it to every household or just a few households? And so that's kind of where I think it was coming from on just doing it by the population, to make it fair. Because, what I can do is I cannot reach as many people or as a high a percentage in my community with less dollars.
One thing we did, just to address your original, question, is in the residential recycling incentive, it's in the new plan, we put a minimum threshold. So, we have, right now, there's no minimum threshold. So we added a minimum threshold. It's probably, when I ran the numbers, probably gonna be $3,000. So any community who applies is going to get at least $3,000, and then it goes up from there. So we did, that is currently in the solid waste plan. I like the idea of the social vulnerability index. Maybe we could do that.
So Michelle, we've kind of been talking around you, so do you have comments related to the proposal? You did create a memo addressing the proposal.
I think I laid out my thoughts in the memo, but I really do, I definitely agree with Mr. Waller about the grassroots efforts, and think that, staff will be working on our budget. Believe it or not, we have to come up with our budget for 2024. We're gonna be starting working on that next month, or actually this month is May already. So, we, could add in there a large grant program similar to what we're doing this year, that we had before. We could even increase the budget. Last time we had $500,000, so we could increase that, and it seems like that is the consensus that we want to do that again. Municipalities and townships are eligible to apply for that, so we would have that again.
how can we make that a better connection? Because, I've been at Colerain, I've been at North College Hill, so I've been at two different parts of the equation here. Some communities see the attempt to write for a grant, and they just give up because they don't have the expertise. They don't even have expertise in the community that could volunteer for it. Yeah. And I guess, to me, it would be a good idea to kind of reshuffle that. So instead of you're allowed to apply for a grant, maybe it's more aggressive in that we go to you and say, hey, this seems, show us what you've got going on. And again, to get back to that grassroots effort, we want to help you. Do you have any ideas? I don't know. I think it's like as a teacher, when I say to all the students, hey, come by if you want extra credit, I get no one. If I say, hey, Mr. Kesterman, come by, I got some extra credit for you, he comes by. Because it's more of a personal kind of connection with that.
Michelle, I'll offer, our agency had a bunch of monies that were originally designated for COVID, and we were successful at writing mini grants for our communities. I think we had over 35 school districts and communities apply and get awarded grants ranging from $10,000 to $20,000. They range from Elmwood Place to Colerain Township and Green Township, so feel free to reach out and I can share how we did that.
I like your idea, Matt, because I don't think our existing RR program has been very effective. I don't even know what the money actually gets spent for. If I could see some things like it is used to pay for actual recycling, that'd be fine, but I think right now it's the uses to which that money can be put are very broad and general, and there's no tracking of the money. Once the county writes the check, it's gone, and there is some reporting back, but there's no, it's going to where it needs to be needs to be going. And in this case, you're specifically talking about waste diversion. Is it really going towards something that's really being effective at waste diversion? Or is it being spent on other things that, are not very effective, not very
Well,
To address that, we do,
Yeah.
they know exactly. You have to,
I
you have to
think
give invoices. So I know that, it essentially the RRI that the city gets from the county pays for a month and a half of our curbside program.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the other communities do that. I don't know what they, I've seen it spent on things for recycled paper and things of that sort, which is admirable, but it doesn't really hit at the heart of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that, buy recycled, closes the loop. Yeah,
that
part
was-
of the cycle.
There's so much recycled paper available out there now. That program was originally in place 30 years ago, whenever it was, when it was, one, very difficult to find recycled paper, and two, it was relatively expensive. So, you know, there's not a need to subsidize people's purchase. All I can find is recycled paper these days, as a matter of fact.
all right, so, anybody else have any comments to the proposal? So, I think we're split, so we're gonna have to vote. I do feel as though part of the crux of this is the fee increase being associated with it, and maybe taking an idea that's been brought forward and, germinating over that through the budget conversation to have it continue to live, from my perspective, just not live in this form, and have this off the table when we talk about the fee increase in the spring of next year, after we look at the organics piece, or bring it back at that time and say, well, maybe this is part of that fee increase. But, that's my own perspective. So Matt, I'm gonna leave it to you to, make the motion.
So I'll motion to approve the changes in the plan update, with the additional changes that were provided.
Okay, so just be clear, is that this one, or is that this one?
I think Matt's proposing the one in here,
That's
that one.
This is already, we already talked about this.
Okay,
Doing
just
it.
making sure.
So I'm confused as well, Colleen.
Yeah.
All right, so, Matt, I'm gonna try to clarify you. Okay, so Matt has a proposal on the, this language, the clarifying language about the timeline is already going into the plan. That's been
Okay.
talked
Yeah,
about.
and that was the
So
one thing I
Matt's
wanted to make
proposal
sure.
is to, use 0.75 of the Alva District tipping fee for the purpose of funding some local programs.
Here's the original proposal and, the update. I saw that they're copies, so I didn't.
Funded out of surplus. And then,
Is there a second to Matt's idea for proposal? Thank you. All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm gonna abstain. I wanna thank Mr. Wallard for bringing this program forward, but I'm gonna abstain.
All right, thank you.
231.
241. The motion fails.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for putting that. Yeah, thank you
Absolutely.
for putting it forward. All right, let's move on to informational items. Oh, no, we have the most important.
Ratify the plan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no, you see why I just overlooked it. Yeah, let's do ratify the plan.
Motion.
No. All right, Michelle, sorry.
I'll motion to ratify the plan with the amended languages provided today.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion about ratifying the plan? Dun. I think this is great. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good.
I'm still coming for grassroots, so.
Good. Let's talk about the budget.
Yeah.
All right,
No, we can leave until you've signed the paper and dated it.
all right. I don't have my glasses on, so that's what I'm just gonna say I didn't see. All right, So, informational items, Michelle.
Yes, so I'll just go through both of these. There are two grant, wrap-up reports, attachment E and attachment F. Attachment E is actually, so these are two-year grants. This is the final report wrap-up for the 2020 Waste Reduction Innovation Grant. These were all granted, I believe, right before COVID. So some of them changed.
No, it came in the middle of COVID because we weren't around before COVID.
Some of these changed their project ideas. Many though, I'll have to say, I'm very, very impressed. Most of them were successful. You know, there were, you know, some tweaks because of COVID, but, most of the, organizations were able to pull it off. Some did return funds, but, overall very successful, and there were so many that I'm not going to go over all of them. Did anyone have questions about the 2020 Waste Reduction Innovation Grant? There were a lot of them.
Yeah, no, I was just impressed with some of the tonnage of some of them. It was good.
Yeah, really great.
I don't wanna see it now, but do you have a summary of what was originally projected versus what was achieved?
Oh, and the ton, yeah, we can come up with that. Summary of projected and achieved. Yep. The other attachment is more recent. These are the Waste Reduction Innovation Grant, that we've, awarded since the last policy committee meeting, which is just one, which is the City of Reading, for outdoor space recycling. The City of Reading is, currently a target community. This is probably our last project with them that we're gonna wrap up. The Gage Bradford, our community specialist, works very closely with Reading, and, this is kind of the last piece that they need to kind of wrap up. And, as you know, the Reading Bridal District is one of the most famous bridal districts in the area, so this will involve putting outdoor, recycling bins in that, and also in their parks, which are actually very well used. So, I think it's a great program. So that, I don't need a vote on that because it's under 15,000.
All good stuff. All right, thank you. Any questions about the updates? Then we're on to our next meeting, meeting date. So, next meeting is scheduled for July 19, 1:30 on a Wednesday, in this building. And is that it? Does anybody have anything else for the good of the cause?
Just one real quick comment, in the spirit of my comments related to Matt's, motion, I do think the idea of grassroots is awesome, and I'd love to hear, maybe not next meeting, but in the next few meetings, any ideas, Michelle, you and your team may have related to how we can be impactful related to using some of our dollars to further fund grassroots efforts, and really get your recommendation on how we as a policy committee can make some change.
Actually, I'll have an additional comment then too. So the Cincinnati, putting on a different hat here, Cincinnati Recycling and Reuse Hub just kicked off our Neighborhood Ambassador Program, and we're trying to get ambassadors in all of the 52 neighborhoods of Cincinnati, plus all of the other municipalities. And I think that would maybe be a good place to partner, just kind of having people in those locations to help figure out what the barriers are, what their needs are, et cetera, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, each of us.
So let me just say, you know, oftentimes it's a matter of capacity, as you said. And we did small business grants at the county during COVID. We found that the really small guys didn't apply at all because they didn't have capacity to apply.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so we created a back room, function so that those really small guys who, wanted to apply, didn't have the capacity to do it, and they're small business owners, by the way, so they have no time either, had the ability to apply through that support that we provided. So that's another way to get it, and just the exposure, as you say, many of them might not even be aware that we're doing these grants. So,
I promise nobody in my neighborhood knows what Belleville is, so that is an issue.
So maybe the ambassadors are part of that, as well as us creating a better message out, to make people aware that they're paying the creek, and then the support as well, so.
Yeah, Matt, I like your idea about Michelle having another employee, I guess. To focus on that, I think, and honestly, it all I know for the really smaller communities, it's tough. I'm sure Coeur d'Alene Township is thinking the same thing. It's like, wait, we gotta take on another role here someplace else. So I like that idea a lot. I know it requires significant change in budgeting, but pursuing that, I think it's well worth it.
Well, and again, a budget conversation, right? We're moving into a budget, so let's have everyone on the table.
Yep, and I've had the same experience as well, where I used to have these applications for folks and realized that they didn't have the capacity, so I had to meet with them and just fill it out for them, you know? And so that's kind of what the kind of assistance that we're gonna have to probably provide in some of these areas that have just kind of been left behind.
It would be interesting to see a study on how many jurisdictions have taken this on our offer and how many have not. It would be, who has not, and then maybe do some outreach there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I appreciate everybody's consideration, and, I found out that there's a whole genre of academic journals that deal with landfills and recycling. And they come from economics, engineering, ecology, oh my gosh. And you would think they'd be very exciting. Sometimes they're not.
Nail biter.
All right, I'm gonna entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion. Second.
Okay, I'm gonna. All in favor? That's right, all those seconds, indicate by saying aye.
Yeah, no, that's kind of, I figured it's a very minimum.
Oh, no.
I think that's a great.
And it was really nice, I mean,